All right, and we are off and rolling here on a Monday. The Justin Kinner Show, Dayton's only afternoon local sports talk show. Appreciate you guys. Hope you had a great weekend. We're live and rolling here on 1410 Wing AM, the Justin Kinner Show YouTube channel. Make sure you're following the Justin Kinner Show Facebook page. There's plenty of ways to interact with us. 937-518-1410. 937-518-1410. That's the number to call or text, however you want to interact with the show. The Justin Kinner Show YouTube channel, of course, that's where you could watch the show. And if you want to jump in on the conversation, you could do so. And let your opinions be known in the chat, and that's where I'll interact with you right there. All right, so the NFL playoffs are off and officially rolling, and the one thing that we do know is that, well, we don't know who's going to win the Super Bowl, but we know who isn't. We don't know who's going to win the Super Bowl, but we know who isn't. We know it's not going to be the Cleveland Browns, and we know it's not going to be the Cincinnati Bengals. But we're going to talk about these playoffs because I think that you have a good chance to reflect and kind of analyze your team when you watch the teams that were good enough to get it done. We talk all season about our team's deficiencies. We know what's wrong with our teams, but what needs to be right with our teams so that our teams can catch up to participate with the teams that had the honor to play this weekend. And that's the interesting thing. You know, when you look at how the playoffs have kind of laid out, when you look at how it's all kind of transpired, you look at the fact that the Bills and the Jaguars, I mean, every game has been phenomenal. The 2-7 matchup, the Patriots, and the Chargers matchup has been horrendous. That was the most horrendous one right there. And that was still closer than the score indicated. But I don't know if that was a defensive slugfest or just two average offenses trying to out-average one another. Congratulations to the Patriots. You out-averaged the Chargers. We'll talk about Justin Herbert in a moment. If I'm going to be a Justin Herbert defender as often as I am, at a certain point, kind of have to just realize that, okay, this guy, he's regressed. He is not the guy that I thought he was years ago, and I think that's a problem. We'll talk about him more later. But the Niners and the Eagles, phenomenal game. The Bears and the Packers, what about that comeback right there? Phenomenal. Rams and Panthers. The Panthers, I tell you what, the Rams came out on top, but I have a lot more respect for the Panthers. I didn't respect the Panthers all year. Every time I'd see their name pop up, I would pick against them right away. And then all of a sudden, you kind of look at it at the end of the season. Okay, Carolina, not bad. They're not a bad football team. And they looked the part. Against the Rams. But the Rams, 12-5, now 13-5 with their 13th win coming in the playoffs. Look, when you have Sean McVay, you have Matthew Stafford, you have Puka Nacua, you have Devontae Adams, you have the experience that they do. This isn't the most explosive Rams team that we've seen in recent seasons. This isn't the best Rams defense. No Aaron Donald. Doesn't the Aaron Donald era seem so long ago? But it's a well-coached team. So when you sit back and you look at the teams that played this weekend, I sat back and I was just watching these teams. I'm like, man, the gap between these teams and my team is pretty wide. And for you Bengals fans watching, the gap between these teams and your team, and I know a lot of you are very egotistical because you follow the likes of your quarterback, but the gap between these teams and your team is wider than you think. But I will say, I didn't watch one offense this season or this weekend. Outside of the Rams, I don't think there is one offense that I would take over the Cincinnati Bengals offense. I will give you guys that. The Seahawks didn't play. The Broncos didn't play. I still wouldn't take the one seeds offenses over Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Chase Brown, as much as I'm not a big fan of his. I know that there's something there. Mike Gesicki, Noah Fant. Noah Fant was a turnover machine. He gave points away. But the bottom line is, I'll take the Bengals offense over anything that I watched this opening weekend of the NFL playoffs. But I also know, as bad a defenses as what I also watched this weekend, I also know that the reason that teams can afford to be offensively is because defensively they're there to balance them out. So when Bengals fans argue, why would we get rid of T. Higgins? Why would we get rid of Jamar Chase? Why would we get rid of I'm anyone advocating for that, but the T. Higgins thing why would we do that? Because it is about balancing out the roster. I'm watching Josh Allen will his team. Like, Josh Allen was the most impressive weapon yesterday. He willed his team to a win yesterday. No Jamar Chase, no T. Higgins. He does have one of the best running backs in the NFL, but that's really the only elite offensive weapon he has. He doesn't have two number one wide receivers. His offensive line is solid. It's not great. The Bills' defense, it's solid. It's not great. That's not a very good Bills team. And the Jaguars were playing some of the best football heading into the playoffs, and Josh Allen single-handedly willed his team to victory, which is why I am so much more impressed with anything that Josh Allen does than Joe Burrow, just because of what Josh Allen has to overcome. And I think Joe Burrow is as good as Josh Allen. I think that Joe Burrow actually could will his team to victories and not have to edge out close wins by out-talenting the other team on offense because you have two number one wide receivers. I mean, I think Joe Burrow should, and it should be expected, to elevate talent around him the way Josh Allen did this past weekend. Matthew Stafford, the Rams. When I watch the Rams are the closest thing to the Cincinnati Bengals that I watched this past weekend. They're the closest thing that I watched to the Bengals this past weekend. Matthew Stafford, Joe Burrow, phenomenal quarterbacks. All right, Puka Nacua, obviously, you look at him and Devontae Adams teamed up. It's a great 1-2 punch like Joe Burrow has with his two wide receivers. They're not as good as the top, as the number, as the two receivers that Joe Burrow has, but that's the team that is most similarly built to the Cincinnati Bengals. So when I'm watching these teams, I'm like, all right, when you look at these teams that are playing this weekend, how do they compare to our teams? And what is the gap? What is the difference between where the team that we compared to the most, where they're at, and where we are at? So for the Bengals, I think that the Rams are the most comparable team that's remaining in these playoffs. Do you guys agree? For those who are watching, for those who are listening, 937-518-1410, text into the show. Would you agree that the Rams are the most similar team? They're the most similar team to the Bengals. I think that's the case. Now, as far as the Cleveland Browns are concerned, when you look at the teams that are in the playoffs, what's that team that's the most comparable to the Cleveland Browns? And it's interesting because there's a lot of really average offenses that the Browns would just aspire to be even average at this point. But I've said from the beginning that the team that I think, even though this team didn't play this past weekend, the team that I think Cleveland is most similarly built towards or to is the Denver Broncos. One main reason of that is because they have a dominant defense, and they are a team that has a quarterback that doesn't have to be perfect. They're not an elite offensive team, but they are the most effective, balanced team in this entire playoff. And by the way, it's kind of funny. I think Denver's the best team remaining in these playoffs, and I don't think Denver is the scariest team we've seen in the last 10 years. Right? Like, I don't think that this Denver team is scarier than any team we've seen reach a Super Bowl or win a Super Bowl over the last 10 years. But their quarterback is above average. I think their offense is effective. They can run the ball. They could effectively pass the ball in certain situations. Their defense is fantastic. They're led by their defense. I think Cleveland is most similar to Denver. Obviously, there's a gap, but you see what I mean. I think the Bengals are the most similar to the Rams, and I think that the Browns are the most similar to the Broncos as far as the roster makeup at this point. But what's the gap between where these teams are and where those teams that we're watching are? Now, I'll start with the Bengals. The gap between the Bengals and the team that I think that they're most similar to in the playoffs, the Rams, I think it all goes back to what we've talked about, and I might be willing to kind of slightly change my mind a little bit in this discussion. And I think it's going to come down to coaching. Okay, as we sit here right now, and yes, I know we use AI here at 1410 Wing AM. I think AI did a good job with the John Harbaugh, Andy Reid, and Nick Sirianni makeups. I have no clue. We tried so hard to get AI to spit out a Zach Taylor look, and they just couldn't do it. I mean, that doesn't look like Zach Taylor whatsoever. This guy doesn't look confused. This guy has a smile on his face. This guy does not look like Zach Taylor, but whatever. AI, I appreciate your work and being my assistant on this. But the bottom line is the gap between where our teams are now and the teams that I've compared them to that are currently in the playoffs right now. We could talk talent all day, but the gap is coaching. When you look at the landscape of the NFL right now, the NFL, I don't think it's great. I don't think that I don't think we have I thought the Eagles were knocking on the door of being the dynasty to replace the Chiefs. I don't think we have any dynasty type of teams right now. I don't think the gap between the 1 seed in the AFC and the bottom seed and the Chargers at 7, I don't think it's that wide. I don't think that the 1 seed being the Seahawks in the NFC and the Packers at the 7 seed, I don't think it's that wide. In fact, some, even though the Packers lost, some would almost take the Packers over the Seahawks more times than not. So when you have this many I don't want to say average teams, but I think parity is the fair word. It's tough to pick these playoffs. I mean, it really is a coin flip almost in every matchup. Tonight, the Steelers and Texans, I'm not confident in either one of these two teams to win. Someone's going to win. I'm just not sure I'm confident in either one of them to win. That's how I felt over the weekend. The Jaguars, Bills, I had more reasons to pick against both teams than to pick for. And I felt the same thing last night with the Patriots, Chargers. Same thing with the Bears and the Packers and the Eagles and the Niners, Panthers, Rams. I mean, there's more reasons to pick both teams in all matchups to lose than there was really to pick any of these teams to win. And I kind of feel like that moving forward. Like Bills, Broncos. Broncos are the 1 seed. I could come up with more reasons why I think the Broncos will lose that game than win that game. And same thing with the Bills. That's just kind of where we're at with what's left in the playoffs right now. So when you start splitting hairs about what separates these teams, to me, it's easy to say quarterback, yes. But it does come down to coaching. And I was on the side of, I think the Bengals would be wrong to jump ship from Zach Taylor, mainly because of the fact that we've seen when Joe Burrow is healthy that this team just wins. When this team is healthy, they get to the AFC Championship game 2 years. When this team is healthy, they've been to a Super Bowl. This team just hasn't been healthy. What can this team do if they just get healthy? But even if this team just gets healthy with the worst defense in the NFL and a shady offensive line and one of the worst run teams in football, how are you going to overcome those deficiencies once you get to the playoffs? Because you can't just keep saying Joe Burrow. And I saw some of the best coaching jobs in the NFL over the weekend. All right. As much as I like Harbaugh, I think that the Patriots outcoached the Chargers. They outmuscled the Chargers. They outmaneuvered the Chargers. They didn't out-talent the Chargers because I don't think the Patriots are that much more talented than the Chargers. I just think it came down to coaching. And Harbaugh is a guy that gets kind of stuck in his ways a bit. And I think what we saw yesterday, I think the Patriots overcame that. You look at the Bills and the Jaguars, 2 teams with a ton of deficiencies. And McDermott on the hot seat. If they lose that game, John Harbaugh is probably already on his way to New York to interview for the Buffalo job and probably take that job. But I think McDermott's the better coach between him and, of course, the Jaguars head coach. Coaching won that matchup. Rams, Panthers, same thing. Sean McVay, you're not going to lose that. How about the 49ers? I know Sirianni's been to multiple Super Bowls and has won a Super Bowl, but I think many people out there, myself included, if Shanahan and Sirianni are both available, I'm picking Shanahan every day in the week. You look at the roster of the Niners, all their star players were out yesterday, and they still beat the Eagles. I like Matt LaFleur with the Packers, but Ben Johnson, the Bears didn't make a ton of changes. They beefed up the offensive line from a season ago, but they didn't make a ton of changes. Ben Johnson comes in, you get the right coach, and then all of a sudden, everything just came together. The better coach won. So if the Bengals even would have made this playoff, yes, it's the Joe Burrow factor. It's that, I get it. But at the end of the day, to me, it does come down to if the NFL is going to be parity driven, and if the NFL is going to be built with a ton of rosters that have a star quarterback, but a balanced offense with a balanced defense, but not great on either side, if that's what this is going to be, you have to have that leg up on coaching. You have to be able, because Joe Burrow is going to obviously provide for you in quarters 2 and 3. But I think coaching comes into play in quarters 1 and 4 to set the tone, make adjustments after that opening drive, and what adjustments are going to be made late in the game in close game situations. And I like Zach Taylor more than a lot of you. I don't put him in a top 5 coaching category by any means, but I think when you prioritize the Bengals' issues over the years, I don't put him in the top 5. But from what I've seen over the weekend, man, if you find yourself in a close game, you find yourself in a situation where you're going up against a team that's a little bit more balanced and better, and it's going to come down to McDermott against Zach Taylor, who we've seen Zach Taylor get the best of in the past, and not really Zach Taylor, but more of Joe Burrow and company, I'm taking McDermott based on the landscape of today's NFL. I'm taking Harbaugh over Zach Taylor. You just continue to look at the NFL landscape, and it's like every team in the AFC, I'm going to pick Mike Tomlin over Zach Taylor. All right. I think that the Texans have a better head coach than Zach Taylor, and the Broncos have the best coach in the, outside of Andy Reid and Mike Tomlin. I think that the Broncos have the third best coach in that conference over there. So I have not been the one to really push the whole fire Zach Taylor thing, but when you start to look at who won over the weekend, Josh Allen's the only quarterback that I think willed his team to a win over the weekend. All the other games, that was all coaching. Sean McVay pushed his team to a win over the weekend. All right. Shanahan pushed the Niners to a win over the weekend. Ben Johnson with the Bears. Vrabel with the Patriots. Josh Allen's the only quarterback that I think willed his team to a win over the weekend. The rest was all coaching. And we'll find out tonight who has the better coach between the Texans and the Steelers. I mean, I think it's going to come down to that. I'm Justin Kinner. It's the Justin Kinner Show, 1410 ESPN Radio, 937-518-1410. I watched these playoffs, and the first thing that came to my mind is, I've never been a big push Zach Taylor out the door type of guy. But the fact that the Bengals didn't even, when you look at all these coaches, the fact that John Harbaugh is available and the Bengals aren't even going to make a push to talk to him because they feel like we can go one more year with Zach Taylor. Guys, what if the Browns, and I think it's a long shot that they do get Harbaugh, but if they do get a John Harbaugh, if they do get a Mike McDaniel, with the Browns defense that they have and their ability to run the football, and they're going to fix that offensive line, I know quarterback, I won't confidently go into that. But the Browns are a lot closer to fixing who they are than I think that the Bengals are from fixing who they are. And I say that if the Browns get John Harbaugh. If the Browns get John Harbaugh, I think the Browns are closer to accomplishing what they want to than the Bengals are to accomplishing what they want to. That's how important coaching is in the NFL right now, especially. I'm Justin Kinner. It's the Justin Kinner Show. Do you agree, disagree? 937-518-1410. You could text or call. We'll be right back.
The Justin Kinner Show. Right here on 1410 ESPN Radio.
They didn't have skim milk for your coffee, so I just got formaldehyde.
Oh, isn't that stuff in floor cleaner?
Pizza's here. Would you like cheese on that? Or how about a Crowley?
Oh, no, that's in bug spray.
Hi there. Would you like to sample our new scent, diethylene glycol?
Isn't that the stuff in antifreeze?
You wouldn't want to eat it, drink it, or even smell it, but that's exactly what's in your vapes. If you vape, quit. If you don't vape, don't start. For help, go to odh.ohio.gov/no vapes. A message from the Ohio Department of Health.
I'm Terry Krupp of Laird's Tax and Accounting, serving this area's tax and accounting needs for over 80 years. One of the most rewarding aspects of our jobs as tax preparers is that we have families that have used our services for generations. Laird's Tax and Accounting is a pioneer in our industry, being the first to offer new services. We stand behind your return if the IRS has questions. We know the tax code and can make the difficult task of making your tax filing easier. Relax. Contact us at 937-325-6571. Information at lairdstax.com.
Okay, so your trophy's in the cabinet. Business is great. The growing pains are all in the past, and you're feeling optimistic. Now you're in big trouble. Because truth is, no matter how well you slayed your last quarter, the next one could slay you right back. And without a cohesive strategy and a scalable idea you can rely on, nothing is certain except uncertainty. Which is why for your next rodeo, you need the Next Rodeo. The Next Rodeo is a true creative partner that brings next-level creative thinking and production quality to companies who didn't believe they could afford it. So you can keep your company growing without outgrowing the dream that started it. The Next Rodeo. The difference between the business you have and the business you want is one great scalable idea. Get the full story at thenextrodeo.com.
Season. Download.
When you think of the most exciting team in Dayton, it's okay if you don't think of the doctors and therapists at Premier Health. We don't have jerseys or trading cards. We don't get primetime coverage. We don't sell out arenas, have good drip, or autograph sessions. We're just happy to be your team's favorite team.
Hey, y'all. It's the Rocket Roger Clemens here. Spent a lot of time pitching heat. Years later, the pain in my joints remind me of those days, but I'm not looking to sit still, and I definitely am not interested in going under the knife. That's why I chose QC Kinetics.
Not just for elite retired athletes. QC Kinetics gives everyday folks joint pain relief using regenerative treatments that work with your body to help repair joint damage.
No surgery, no long recovery, whether it's your knees, hips, shoulders, or back. My friends at QC Kinetics will help you get moving again so you can get back to doing the things you love.
QC Kinetics medical professionals will look at your x-rays or MRI to determine if you're a good candidate.
I trusted QC Kinetics to help me feel like myself again, and I'm proud to recommend them to you.
Call QC Kinetics today and schedule your free consultation.
Call QC Kinetics 937-936-0325. That's 937-936-0325. 937-936-0325.
The Justin Kinner Show. Right here on 1410 ESPN Radio.
All right, and we are back. It's the Justin Kinner Show here on a Monday, 937-518-1410, the number to call and jump in on the conversation. All right. So we opened up like the importance of coaching. Like it's just one of those things where for a while now, it's not as if I've ever said that Zach Taylor is a top 5 coach in the NFL. I just don't think that he's a top 5 problem in Cincinnati, or at least I believe that to be the case up until what I saw over the weekend. If you think about it, for years the Chiefs have, it was the Tom Brady dynasty. Yes, it was the Patriots, but obviously the Tom Brady dynasty kind of extended a bit from the Patriots right over to Tampa. You know what I mean? Like it just kind of handed it off to him, or he kind of handed it off to Tampa on the way out. And when he left, it was right to the Chiefs. And honestly, as the Chiefs have started to kind of die off, you look at the Eagles, and I thought that they had the blueprint. You had a quarterback who's been to 2 Super Bowls, and Jalen Hurts says Super Bowl MVP. They've been to multiple Super Bowls, and they just look like they were about to kind of take the baton from the Chiefs and be the next, mini dynasty run here. And that's clearly not the case. I mean, the Eagles have so many issues, maybe being overconfident in Jalen Hurts early. And obviously there's an issue there. So there's really no clear-cut team that is head and shoulders better than really anyone else in their conference. Like, who's the team in the NFC right now? Like, you still have your favorites, like your Niners and Eagles, and the Eagles will be right back in the mix of things next year. Don't get me wrong. I just don't think that the gap between them and everybody else is that wide, and the same thing with the Niners. Just how good are the Seahawks? I think there's a lot of people, including me, that it's not that we don't believe in the Seahawks. It's the Sam Darnold thing, because this is the second straight season where we've seen Sam Darnold lead a team to the top record in the NFC. And then when the playoffs got here, playoff Sam showed up. Will playoff Sam Darnold show up next week? In round 2 of the playoffs? That's going to be the big question. The Seahawks have the Niners. But the Seahawks have a legit shot to beat the Niners because the Niners are absolutely depleted right now. Sam Darnold has a chance to lead the Seahawks, of course, to the NFC Championship, where they take on the winner between the Bears and the Rams. But what I watched over the weekend was there's no dominant team in football. The Broncos are very good. They're the 1 seed of the AFC. But I think as good as they are up front on both sides of the ball, they can run the football, very good defense, very good coach. I just think that the coach has elevated the quarterback. So that makes them vulnerable, right? I think that's the case with the Seahawks as well. I think when your coach elevates the quarterback, what would you guys rather have, I guess, is the question I have. Would you rather have a team where the coach elevates the quarterback or the quarterback elevates the coach? And now you could say, well, I want what Andy Reid and the Chiefs had. I think that's they have the best head coach in football and the best quarterback in football. I think that's a little different. Outside of that, I think, McDermott's a very good coach, but I think Josh Allen kind of props him up. And then I think there's limitations there, but I like McDermott, but I think that's a Josh Allen led team. I think that Aaron Rodgers and Mike Tomlin, I think, are both elevating a very average to below average Steelers team. Let's be real. The Texans, I can't tell if it's CJ Stroud. It's still early in his career. Is he elevating his coach or vice versa? The Patriots, I think Vrabel's elevating May. May's solid, but my goodness, that was painful yesterday. So I'm looking around. Ben Johnson has elevated Caleb Williams. All right. The Packers, I don't know. Matt LaFleur, it's tough to roll with Matt LaFleur because I think Aaron Rodgers was Matt LaFleur. Jordan Love, is he elevating Matt LaFleur? Matt LaFleur's not elevating him. I think that's a problem in Green Bay. And then the Rams, I think that's another one. I think the Rams and the Chiefs are very similar. I think you have as good of a head coach as you do a quarterback. I think outside of the Rams and the Chiefs, you don't really have that anywhere else. And Sirianni is one that's another question I have. Is he elevating Jalen Hurts or the other way around? And that may not be a quarterback or a coach elevating or holding back one another. I think that's just how good that defense has been in recent years. That's how good that offensive line has been in recent years. Not good this year. But these playoffs, man, I look at Zach Taylor, I look at the Bengals, and I'm like, well, for a team that can't stop anybody, for a team that can't run the football consistently, don't go cherry pick 5 games where Chase Brown erupted against some of the worst teams in football. This is the playoffs, so you're playing the best teams in football. Can Chase Brown do against the playoff teams that he did against some of the worst teams in football? I don't think so. Oh my gosh, he ran all over the Dolphins. Yes, so did the Browns, and the Browns are a lottery. They're picking at the top of the NFL draft. I don't care what Chase Brown did against the Dolphins. So it's one of those, if this Bengals team with all those deficiencies would have made the playoffs this year, you can't confidently say that they were going to beat any of these teams, because I still think that the gap isn't wide between them and anybody, and that's how it is. Josh Allen was the only quarterback over the weekend that I think physically willed his team to a win. All the other winning teams, it was the coach. It was the coach, because that offense struggled. All right. I think Drake May struggled. I think that the Patriots offense struggled. I think Vrabel led the Patriots to a win yesterday. All right. I think the same thing with Ben Johnson, the Bears didn't make a ton of changes in the offseason. The biggest change they made was going to get Ben Johnson. Ben Johnson, all of a sudden, he just has the right touch when it comes to Caleb Williams and that offense, like he did in Detroit. He leaves. Detroit's out of the playoffs. He gets to Chicago. They're in the divisional round, a game away from the NFC Championship game. And Sean McVay, let's be clear. We know how good Sean McVay is. And Shanahan, they had no business beating the Eagles. Every star player that makes them worthy of watching was not available. He's elevating Brock Purdy. Let's just be clear, to go back to that point from a little bit ago. It's all coaching. So when it comes down to the coaching side of this, who's Zach Taylor going to outcoach in these situations to elevate? Because we know Zach Taylor elevates, or we know Joe Burrow elevates Zach Taylor. But I think with all those deficiencies, no one's willing their way out of Cincinnati into anything. So they either need to load up this roster, or they needed to make a change at head coach. And now they've backed themselves into a corner to where their only option is to load up this offseason of free agency. And that's just going to come down to whether or not Mike Brown decides to pull the trigger on that. And recent history has shown us that that may not be the case. I'm Justin Kinner. It's the Justin Kinner Show, 1410 ESPN Radio. And that's what, brings me to the Browns as far as I'm concerned, because I'm so wishy-washy as far as, what they should do as far as their head coaching vacancy is concerned. Now, there's a lot of different reports out there. I try not to do the whole, the media hates Cleveland thing. But Mary Kay Cabot and other local media, writers have come out and said that there actually is mutual interest between John Harbaugh and the Browns. I believe that, John Harbaugh has a lot of, any team that John Harbaugh has interest in, there's mutual interest. So, it's not like, oh, man, Cleveland and Harbaugh have mutual interest. Look out, Giants. Look out, every other team. If John Harbaugh has interest in any of those vacancies, there's mutual interest there, because they're obviously interested in him as well. But people so badly want to just take Cleveland out of the mix, and they very well could be out of the mix. But I think, and we talked about this last week, of all the teams that have a vacancy, that have an opening right now, and we talked about this with Jason Fitz last week, there is not any team that's available right now outside of the Ravens, who moved on from Harbaugh, that can hand a dominant side of the ball to Harbaugh, who is a defensive-minded head coach. He's a defensive-minded head coach, and you're going to hand Harbaugh a top 5 defense in the NFL and the only dominant side of the ball of any of the teams that have an opening right now. What other team in football right now has as dominant a side of the ball as the Cleveland Browns? And I'm not being a homer here. You know it's true. Deep down, it's true. You could say, well, the Giants can offer Jackson Dart. That's great, but we're still not sure if Jackson Dart is anything. Jackson Dart, to me, there has been so many reports out there that have told him to stop using his body as a missile. And yet he came out and said he wasn't going to change, that he's gotten to this point of his career by playing the way that he has, and he's not going to change it up for anybody. That sounds very uncoachable to me. And I think he's going to double down on that. And you're only as good as your backup quarterback at that point. And you're not good if you have a backup quarterback. And that could be a consistent thing moving forward. I'm not sold on Jackson Dart. And I'm not sold on the Cardinals. Cleveland is the only team in football that can go to John Harbaugh and say, we have a dominant side of the ball. We have one half of the equation there. We're closer. We have 2 first-round picks. And we have a GM who everyone likes to bury, but I mean, my God, the guy is he's very crafty with the when it comes to the cap. Andrew Berry is very good at manipulating the cap. And I've said this before, and I'm not saying Andrew Berry is what the Eagles have and the Niners and some of these other teams, but what the Niners do to keep all that talent on that roster, what the Eagles do, what the Rams do, the Browns do that. The difference is those other teams win. But the difference is those other teams have quarterbacks. The Browns need to get a quarterback, and that's obviously how important this is, but they're a lot closer. All right, the Giants, okay, you say, well, they have Jackson Dart. Well, Jackson Dart, they had Jackson Dart last year. They're picking atop the draft. You know, you start to look at this, and you look at the teams that have the openings, and you go down the board. You know, you look at Miami. They don't have a quarterback. Either does Cleveland, but Miami doesn't have a dominant side of the ball. That's just how it is. Tennessee, well, they have Cam Ward. Again, they have a quarterback, but they don't have a quarterback. You don't know who Cam Ward is. You don't know who Cam Ward is. They had Cam Ward last year, still picking at top of the draft. The Titans don't offer anything to Harbaugh like Cleveland can. Continuing to go down this list, the Cardinals, nothing. There's not a team in football out there. The Falcons, you have Michael Penix Jr. Do you? I mean, what is that? I don't know what you're really offering at that point. So as far as I'm concerned, anyone that wants to count Cleveland out, I just can't get on board with that because really, at the end of the day, Cleveland's the only team that can knock on Harbaugh's door and say, we have a GM that is going to manipulate the cap for one more season that we have Deshaun Watson's money on the books, and then that money is going to come off. And imagine how much even more crafty Andrew Berry could be with the cap. And, oh, yeah, let's not forget about just how good Andrew Berry has been in the draft as of late. Last year, every draft pick that Cleveland made was a success, except Dylan Gabriel. Except Dylan Gabriel. Every one of those players is going to be an impact player for the Browns moving forward, and that's huge. When you look at, obviously, Schlesinger, the linebacker that they got out of UCLA, you look at Mason Graham, who they have, the big guy up front. Didn't have a lot of big numbers as far as sacks is concerned, but, was consistently getting to the quarterback. He's a perfect complement to what Myles Garrett does. And one of the main reasons, he's been credited a lot for one of the main reasons that Myles Garrett set that sack record this season was because of the work that Mason Graham is doing up on that defensive line. You went out and got Harold Fannin Jr., who was the team's leading receiver last year at tight end. You drafted Sampson, the running back out of Tennessee, and Quinshon Judkins, who was the best rookie running back in the NFL last season. So Andrew Berry, his ability to draft and their ability to develop. You have one of the best defensive coordinators out there also as well in Jim Schwartz. The list goes on and on. Now, I did see today that the Ravens are interviewing, that the Ravens are interviewing Jim Schwartz for their head coaching vacancy. That's interesting to me. And that's one of those things where that's a good divisional move. I don't think it's smart. I think you move on from Harbaugh. I think, honestly, the coach that Baltimore needs more than anything, I think Mike McDaniel. He's an offensive wizard. You put Mike McDaniel with Lamar Jackson, I think that's a problem. I think that could be a problem. But I don't know if the Browns get John Harbaugh or not. They interviewed Mike McDaniel today. There's a very good chance that Mike McDaniel ends up in Cleveland if they strike out on Harbaugh. No report has come out yet. I haven't come across it, but no word or update as far as whether or not Harbaugh is going to include the Browns in his list of teams that he's willing to sit down and interview with. But again, I've said it before. Of all the teams that need a coach, there is not one team that can knock on Harbaugh's door and say, hey, we have a dominant side of the ball for you to work with. We have a GM. We have an owner that's willing to spend whatever you need. He didn't have that in Baltimore. Harbaugh almost lost Lamar Jackson in Baltimore because they weren't willing to pay him, and everyone was like, what's taking so long? This is easy. He's, MVP quarterback at the time. When he's on the field, they win. When he's off the field, they lose. This wasn't that difficult. Not going to have to worry about that in Cleveland. and Harbaugh's a stabilizing force, I think Cleveland could make a lot of sense. It just depends at his age, at his point in this career, at this point of his career, does he want to deal with all of that? That's going to be the thing. Chad, what up, Chad? Chad's on the Justin Kinner Show YouTube channel. He says, look what Stafford did. Was that coaching or him? He did a lot of that in Detroit without good coaching. Just saying, that goes back to the question that I asked a little bit ago about look at the coaches, look at the teams remaining in the playoff. How many of those teams is the quarterback elevating the coach or the coach elevating the player? I don't think that, and this is what I said earlier, McVay is he took Goff to a Super Bowl. And he won a Super Bowl with Matthew Stafford because I think as great of a coach as McVay is, he had equally as good of a quarterback in Matthew Stafford. I think that's why the Rams just continue to win. Even when the Rams lost Aaron Donald, even when the Rams, have lost a lot of talent, they just keep winning because I think they have as great of a head coach as they do a quarterback. The Bengals can't overcome a lot of deficiencies because I think the gap between the coach and the quarterback is pretty wide. And I'm dialing it back on that take because I was so not pro Zach Taylor, but you guys know where I'm at with that. I don't need to put out the disclaimer every time, but that's why I'm starting to change my tune a bit because the playoffs have kind of shown me the importance of that head coach quarterback combo, why it's so important. Ben Johnson and Caleb Williams, a prime example. Caleb Williams last year was not very good. Caleb Williams looks like a legit top 10 starting quarterback in the NFL since Ben Johnson arrived. But Caleb Williams is dependent on Ben Johnson. Matthew Stafford's not on McVay, but I don't think McVay's dependent on him either. Andy Reid has proven he's not dependent on quarterback. He's been to Super Bowl with Donovan McNabb. He's won divisions with Alex Smith, and he's won Super Bowls with Patrick Mahomes. I don't think he elevates Patrick or vice versa. I think that's another example of a great coach, great quarterback combo. There's not many. Denver, I love Denver. All right, I love their head coach, but I think he's elevating Bo Nix. I don't think that's an equal comparison right there. As far as that goes. Last one here as we go to the text line. I don't know who this is. Oh, Ron. Ron says Andrew Berry is overrated. He's the reason you guys went in the red for 4 years. You mean, and again, I'm going back to this. It didn't work out with Deshaun Watson. But you mean an owner that gave his GM the green light to do whatever you had to do to go get who at the time was a top 5 quarterback in the NFL? I think John Harbaugh is not against that. John Harbaugh is going to have a say in that as well. And I promise you, if the Ravens 5 years ago didn't have Lamar Jackson and were just floundering in desperate need of a quarterback, they would have been in that mix as well. The Steelers were in that mix. The Falcons were in that mix. All right, the Saints were in that mix. Everyone acts like Cleveland was the only one. Well, they were desperate for a quarterback. I've said this many times before. If you're not desperate for a quarterback, then what are you doing? Because if the Bengals didn't have Joe Burrow, guess what they would be for a quarterback? Desperate as well. They just wouldn't have the guts to do what the Browns did, and it blew up in the Browns' face. But I appreciate a team that's willing to be aggressive and go after something. What are we complaining about with Cincinnati right now? They're not aggressive. Smallest scouting department in football. They failed for 3 straight years and are stubborn and have no plans of changing anything. Give me the self-destructive, over-aggressive Browns who will at least attempt to go after things to make them better instead of Cincinnati who gets something great and doesn't try to maximize that. I don't know why we try to use that as an insult against Cleveland. As far as that's concerned. All right, that's 3:45 here. All right, let's 937-518-1410. Justin Kinner Show, 1410 ESPN Radio. We'll get back to your calls and texts coming up in a moment. Tax season is here, and I'm sure you're thinking about who is going to be doing my taxes. Try my friends over at Arrowhead Tax Service in New Carlisle. Call Michael Maxwell and Joe Tanis today, 937-543-5770. They're ready to serve you at 100 South Church Street in New Carlisle. It's a brand new location. I know they're excited about that. Arrowhead Tax Service gives back to the community through athletics and nonprofits, and all new clients save 10% off. Online at arrowheadtaxservice.com, where their target is your satisfaction. If you've never used Arrowhead Tax Service and Michael Maxwell, you're going to get 10% off your filing. So take advantage of that. They've taken care, anyone that works at Wing, they've taken care of us for years. Keith Byers gets his taxes done there. I've been getting my taxes done there for years. They do a great job. Give them a call today. Arrowhead Tax Service, Michael Maxwell, 937-543-5770. where their target is your satisfaction.
The Justin Kinner Show. Right here on 1410 ESPN Radio.
If you need new roofing, siding or gutters, skylights or patio enclosures, if you're a homeowner or business and need someone you can trust, don't take a chance. Enhance with Lance. Lance Roofing and Siding has been satisfying customers since 1993 and hold an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau. See Lance Roofing and Siding at their new location at 6903 Dayton Springfield Road in Enid. Call for a free estimate at 864-2722. That's 864-2722. Online at lanceroofing.com.
If the power goes out in the middle of winter, do you have a way to stay warm? If not, you need the Vesta off-grid space heater from My Patriot Supply. It's compact, safe to use indoors, and best of all, it doesn't need electricity. Right now, you can get a free Vesta and other bonus gifts when you order the Winter Survival Kit from My Patriot Supply. Just go to mypatriotsupply.com to see everything included. That's mypatriotsupply.com.
For decades, people have been asking, what's the famous recipe behind Lee's Famous Recipe Chicken? And we've decided we're finally going to tell you. Starting with the 8-piece family meal and its 8 pieces of crispy, delicious bone-in chicken, 4 fluffy, buttery biscuits, and 2 large sides. Oh, wait, I'm just getting word from our lawyers that I can't actually tell you any of that. So, better pick up an 8-piece family meal and figure it out for yourself. Good luck. The 8-piece family meal, only at Lee's Famous Recipe Chicken, famous for a reason.
Veterans, were you exposed to harmful burn pit smoke while serving overseas? The Department of Veterans Affairs has recognized and is providing benefits to veterans who suffer with asthma, rhinitis, and sinusitis as a result of burn pit exposure. If you served in the Southwest Asia Theater of Operations or Afghanistan, Uzbekistan, Syria, or Djibouti and suffer from any respiratory illnesses that you believe is a result of exposure to burn pits, contact the Montgomery County Veterans Service Commission at 937-225-4801.
Member Week is here for pros at Lowe's. Get up to 40% off hundreds of items from tools and paint to kitchen and bath and more. Just in time to stock up for this year's jobs. Plus, earn 5 times the points on an eligible purchase. Shop member deals in-store and online from January 8th through the 14th. Still not a member? Join for free today. Lowe's. We help, you save. Point boosters subject to exclusions and more terms apply. Loyalty program subject to terms and conditions. Visit Lowe's.com/terms for details. Subject to change.
The Justin Kinner Show. Right here on 1410 ESPN Radio.
All right, Justin Kinner, 1410 ESPN Radio. Coming up here around the corner, we'll have an update. Dayton Flyers fans, we have an update on Adam Jai. If you remember, he was a part of the sports gambling investigation going back to his time at Iona. Neil Sullivan, athletic director for the Dayton Flyers, released a statement just a little bit ago. We'll talk about that more in depth coming up here in a moment. Again, as the spring semester has begun across the board, people start paying attention to roster makeups, and there's one little change to the Dayton roster. We'll talk about that coming up here in a bit. So I do have an update as well. We're talking about John Harbaugh and the Cleveland Browns. ESPN's Adam Schefter did just come out a little bit ago and say that the Browns have done a preliminary and extensive call with John Harbaugh about their head coach opening. And they're still waiting for any announcement to come if there's going to be a face-to-face meeting between both sides. So I don't know what that means. That could just be a courtesy call. Look, the bottom line is I'm confident that the Browns actually have more to offer John Harbaugh than most teams out there. I think they could pay him more than most teams out there. I think that they can actually relinquish some control to give him if he wanted it. And they're the only team in football that can offer him a dominant side of the ball. They can offer, if Harbaugh takes over the Browns, he has a top 5 defense in football. If Schwartz stays, and it sounds like there's a good chance that he would have a top 5 defensive coordinator in football. He would have to get an OC, whether that's Monken or not, and who knows. You can say, well, he doesn't have a quarterback. But the Giants do. They have Jackson Dart. Are you sold? How do you know that they have something in Jackson Dart? Didn't they have something in Daniel Jones after year 1? Look how that turned out. They paid him $40 million a year 3 years after he led them to multiple playoff wins, and they still moved on from him. Now, Daniel Jones looked very solid for the Colts this year, don't get me wrong, but like Cam Ward for the Patriots, Cam Ward for the Titans, okay, they could offer him Cam Ward. So you're saying that there's more security in Cam Ward than no quarterback in Cleveland at this point. I mean, it's Deshaun Watson versus Cam Ward. I'm still going to probably pick Deshaun Watson over Cam Ward. I've seen it from Deshaun Watson. I haven't seen blank from Cam Ward. In fact, you say what you want. I know you're going to look at numbers and all this, that, the other, but you guys watched it. I mean, Shedeur Sanders, I'll take over Cam Ward. I'm not sold on Cam Ward in the Titans. So let's not act like there's just these golden opportunities out there waiting for Harbaugh. I think Cleveland, the more you break it down, the more you start to strip it down, I think they are the one of the better options out there. The only problem is it's Cleveland. They don't have the trust. You know, if the Giants had a top 5 defense in football waiting for Harbaugh, you know what I mean? If they had a GM that has been very successful in recent years, if they had an owner that's willing to spend whatever it takes to succeed, he's the Giants coach the second that Baltimore fired him. Cleveland could offer him more than any of those other teams. It's just because it's Cleveland. And I understand that. And I'm not going to be mad if he decides not to go that route. What I want to know is, it was the phone call that was made today between the Browns and Harbaugh. Was that just a courtesy call from Harbaugh? Because, again, the respect that he has for the franchise during his time at Baltimore in the AFC, he knows members of the front office in Cleveland. His family grew up Browns fans. They grew up in Cleveland. He grew up a Browns fan. That could have just been a courtesy call, and he's turning his attention towards the Giants at this point. And okay. I'm not going to do a whole, man, he's so stupid for doing that. That's fine, because I still think that Cleveland is going to be at the top of the list of a guy that they also interviewed earlier today, and Mike McDaniel. And to be fair, I think what John Harbaugh offers the Browns is stability, an adult in the room, a guy that is going to instantly make Cleveland respectable. People will respect Cleveland just because of the presence of Harbaugh alone. I think that's what makes him the number 1 target. The number 2 target to me is Mike McDaniel, because I think that the pairing of Mike McDaniel and Jim Schwartz, I think, is as good a combination when you have one of the best offensive minds in football with one of the best defensive minds in football. Those two alone can go at anybody. And you're giving Mike McDaniel a top 5 football and defense. Now it's all about this draft, fine-tuning that offense. We'll see what happens. Mike McDaniel, an offensive wizard. Keep in mind that it didn't sound like, Deshaun was not a huge fan of Kevin Stefanski by the end. Could Stefanski have been a problem for Deshaun? We don't know. We'll find out. But I'm not here to tell you that the quarterback situation in Cleveland is great. But again, it's not great in New York. It might be better in New York than Cleveland, but by how much? If Jackson Dart was Cleveland's quarterback next year, would you guys feel any different about Cleveland? You would not. If Cam Ward was Cleveland's quarterback, would you feel any different about Cleveland heading into next year? You would not. So why are we trying to act like Cam Ward in Tennessee is a lock? Why are we trying to act like Jackson Dart in New York is the next best big thing? It's not, or it could be, but you don't know. What if Mike McDaniel comes in with his offensive, prowess and rebuilds Deshaun Watson, or gets the most out of Shedeur Sanders, because he's going to have a fresh mindset when it comes to Shedeur, and it's not about, well, my guy's Dylan Gabriel, and now I'm being forced to throw you out there. Now there's bad mojo between. And, Cleveland might actually have talent, or at least more talent in the pass catcher department. They get a Carnell Tate in the draft. Maybe they trade and get a deal done with the Eagles to get A.J. Brown. I did put that out earlier today on Twitter as well. I was annoyed with, I thought it was interesting. ESPN in Cleveland, they were talking about, of course, Shedeur Sanders, and one of their hosts had come out and said that they do not think that Shedeur Sanders is a franchise quarterback after watching the other quarterbacks this weekend. And I'm like, oh, you mean the quarterbacks who have good offensive lines, good run games, good wide receivers? You know what I mean? Coaches that aren't out to get them. Pro Football Focus put out they ranked teams based on their full offensive composite of all the weapons included. Shedeur Sanders had the worst weapons in all of football, top to bottom. Wide receivers, everything, top to bottom, the collective effort. Now, I like Caleb Fannin Jr. I like, obviously, Quinshon Judkins. but you're only as good as the whole and sum of your parts. And those are some of your parts, not the sum of your parts. So, I mean, we saw it. We saw Joe Flacco look as absolutely horrific as can be in the first 4 weeks of the season for Cleveland. He couldn't throw it to anybody because nobody was open. And when he did find people that were open, they would drop it. You remember week 1 against the Bengals? They should have beat the Bengals. The Browns were marching the ball down the field. He threw the ball to Jerry Jeudy. Jerry Jeudy, it hits his hands. He's wide open. Ball pops right in the air. Bengals intercept it. Game over. And that wasn't the first time it happened that game. And it wasn't the last time that it happened moving forward for the rest of that month. The Browns, for the first month that Joe Flacco was their quarterback, led the NFL in drop passes. And they weren't very good at, when they did catch it, they weren't getting many yards to begin with. Joe Flacco looked horrible. He goes to Cincinnati where he has weapons. My goodness, look how good he looked then. So that's kind of where I'm at with that. Who knows what's going to happen? But I'm a Mike McDaniel guy. Let's see. Let's go back to we're on the Justin Kinner Show YouTube channel. Chad Kinser says, the Bengals can't overcome their defects because of Duke Tobin, plain and simple. Chad also says that Andrew Berry isn't the problem in the Watson deal. Watson was the problem in the Watson deal, and I agree 100% on that. Everyone's like, Ken, are you ever going to admit you were wrong about Watson? I was wrong about Watson. I at least explained my reasoning for why I was so high on Watson, because everybody was. Deshaun Watson was a top 5 quarterback for the Houston Texans in the NFL, and an NFL that included Lamar Jackson and Patrick Mahomes at the time. So he was off for a year and a half during what was that investigation for him being a scummy person, which I'll never sign off on. But we're talking from a football perspective. He didn't live up to his end of the bargain on the football side. He was exactly what we thought from the non-football side. He was a constant distraction. There was the constant, women coming forward for more allegations. There was the constant suspensions. He lived up to that end because that's what we expected. We expected, though, a top 5 quarterback to go along with it, right or wrong, in the NFL. If you're talented enough and you're worth the noise, teams are going to deal with you. People act like only Cleveland was going to do that. That is not the case. The Steelers were in on him. The Saints were in on him. The Broncos kicked the tires. A lot of teams were interested in Deshaun Watson. Simple as that. The Falcons, the Titans, like the list goes on and on and on. This isn't difficult. So that's kind of where I'm at as far as that goes. He gets to Cleveland. Andrew Berry traded for a top 5 quarterback in football, and they gave up pieces for that reflect that. That was never matched when he got there. So I'm defending the Andrew Berry side of that as far as that goes. And look at that. We're out of time. Justin Kinner Show, 1410 ESPN Radio. We have some Ohio State stuff to get to. I do have an update on Adam Jai, now former Dayton Flyer. What happened there? We'll talk about it when we come back.
The Justin Kinner Show. Right here on 1410 ESPN Radio. Dayton's radio home for Buckeyes football. 1410 WING. Dayton's ESPN Radio.
ESPN 1410 Wing AM weather.
Our forecast is mostly clear, 31 tonight, partly sunny, 49 tomorrow, chance of rain and snow, and 43 on Wednesday. I'm Rick Shrimp, 1410 ESPN Radio.
My husband's an animal in bed.
Well,
Not in the fun way. Think warthog. With a chainsaw.
Snoring and sleep apnea affect over 90 million people, and 1 out of 4 couples sleep in separate rooms. Advent can help. We've been your one-stop solution for nasal congestion, snoring, and sleep apnea for over 20 years. Unlike many other practices, we focus exclusively on these conditions, so you get comprehensive care under one roof. Advent's unique approach can help you breathe and sleep better, and many avoid a CPAP. Plus, most insurance is accepted for our effective 20-minute in-office treatments.
Hey, the only animal you want in your bed is your dog.
Advent. Sleep better. Sleep together. Learn how you can improve your life at adventknows.com.
Coming this winter, a deal so epic, So huge, so famous. You'll have to taste it to believe it. The Homestyle Bowl Combo. Affordability strikes back. Starring famous chicken, melty cheese, sweet corn, mashed potatoes, and rich gravy. The Homestyle Bowl Combo with a regular drink. Now playing for just $4.99 at a Lee's Famous Recipe Chicken near you. Famous for a reason.
Arrowhead Tax Service in New Carlisle is more than a tax preparer. We're your friend. Stop and see Michael Maxwell and Joe Tannis at their new office at 100 South Church Street in New Carlisle. Whether you have personal or business taxes, Michael and Joe are here to take care of all the details for you, down to the last penny. Allow our experience to ease the burden of doing it yourself. Make an appointment at 937-543-5770 or online at arrowheadtaxservice.com, where our target is your satisfaction.
Have you ever thought about having a podiatric physician examine your feet? Doctors of Podiatric Medicine set broken bones, perform wound care, and remove bunions. Common health issues that they treat include ingrown or fungal nails, corns, warts, and skin problems like athlete's foot. Foot exams are easy and can prevent many foot problems. If you can't walk, work, or enjoy sports activities without pain, what are you waiting for? To find a podiatric physician who is a member of the Ohio Foot and Ankle Medical Association, visit associationsadvanceohio.com.
A girl in Kenya dreams of becoming a doctor. An elder in Guatemala dreams of being part of a community. Reach out and change their world, and it will change your own. Unbound.org.
Texting enrolls you into recurring automated text messages. Consent not required to purchase. Message and data rates may apply.
Man, I love seeing the old gang at these reunions. Did you see Brian? He's in better shape than he was 25 years ago. How is that even possible?
Yep, I ran into him a few weeks ago and had to ask. He told me he started taking Nugenix Total T2.
The testosterone booster?
Yeah, but it's way more than that now. It also skyrockets your nitric oxide in as little as 3 hours. I started taking it right away, and I'm already seeing results.
I was wondering what you were doing. You seriously crushed me in that pickup game last week.
Yep, after 40, energy, strength, drive, it all starts going downhill. But with T2, I feel like my old self again. Stronger, leaner, and my energy is way up. My wife even noticed a difference. They're giving out complimentary bottles right now. Just send them a text.
Text ROCK to 321-321 for your complimentary bottle of new Nugenix Total T2. Text now and you'll also get a free bottle of Nugenix Thermo X, our most powerful fat incinerator. That's ROCK to 321-321.
These statements have not been evaluated by the FDA. Product not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease. The Justin Kinner Show. Right here on 1410 ESPN Radio.
All right, more from ESPN's Adam Schefter as things are kind of getting a little bit more clear as far as the direction of the interview train for former Ravens head coach John Harbaugh. Adam Schefter did report that the Falcons have announced that they have an official interview with former Ravens head coach John Harbaugh. He has already began conducting preliminary and extensive phone calls with multiple teams, including the Giants, Titans, Browns, Raiders, and Cardinals, basically all the teams. And look, this is a preliminary measure. So here's why I feel better about that. Browns fans, here's why I feel better about this. The way Adam Schefter framed it before was that the Browns and John Harbaugh had a preliminary, an extensive at-length conversation over the phone, and it made it sound like it was just like a Browns Harbaugh thing. And I was like, yeah, to me, that signals a courtesy call just to say, hey, we at least talked, but I don't know if he's going to give an interview to them. Now, I still think the Browns get an interview. Now, after seeing this, it sounds like he gave a preliminary call to all the teams that had openings, including the team that everyone thinks he's the favorite to get, and that's the Giants, or to pick, and that's the Giants. But he had preliminary talks with the Giants, Titans, Browns, Raiders, and Cardinals, and as well as the Falcons. ESPN's Adam Schefter goes on to say that Harbaugh is trying to determine who to meet with later this week and into next week before making a decision. He is fully expected to coach this upcoming season. It's interesting because today, 6 years ago today, the Cleveland Browns announced the hiring of Kevin Stefanski as their head coach to replace Freddie Kitchens. So, the last time the Browns made a coaching change and hired the replacement, it was 6 years ago today that they made that announcement. So thought that was interesting, but we'll get back. I'll get back into this Adam Schefter thing in a moment. I teased the date and topic. I want to get to that as we are back. Again, I'm Justin Kinner. It's the Justin Kinner Show, 1410 ESPN Radio. Happy Monday. I hope everybody had a great weekend. A lot of great football over the weekend, just no Bengals, no Browns, no Buckeyes. A lot of off-season talk. We're going to get to the Buckeyes in a moment. Something's not right in Columbus. You win a national championship, and I thought, okay, that kind of put everything back on track for this team, and it seemed like they were cruising. It seems like the Buckeyes, who got ahead of the NIL trail, are kind of falling behind in it a bit as far as their approach to roster management. We'll get into that shortly. Speaking of rosters, it's the start of the second semester, obviously, across the board, spring semester. And there's been one thing that, everyone kind of went quiet on, and that was the status of Adam Jai, one of the players that the Flyers, acquired through the transfer portal in the offseason from Iona. Adam Jai, according to a statement from Neil Sullivan, the director of athletics for the University of Dayton, says that Adam Jai Jr. is no longer enrolled at the University of Dayton and as such is no longer a member of the men's basketball program. Athletics will have no further comment at this time. There it is, Neil Sullivan. That's that transparency that we've all grown to love. The only reason that he even released this statement to begin with was not to be transparent or forthcoming. It's just typical Neil Sullivan. He got, fans picked up on it, the rabid fan base, and he had to release a statement. This isn't a statement, dude. He's not on the roster anymore. We know. We saw it. We want to know why. You won't tell us because, screw the fans. But, hey, your seat license is in the mail. He drives me up the wall. And it's most athletic directors that would approach it this way. But it's everything through Neil Sullivan. We don't owe you anything. You owe us. But thank you, 13,000 fans, the best fans in the A-10, the best fans in college basketball. You owe us your money. Where's your money? Come on, where's your money? We're not going to give you an NCAA tournament caliber team any single year, but we're going to charge you for one. So come on, where's your money? Where's your money? Hey, what's going on with Adam Jai? Hey, no further comment at this time. You would have thought we asked him, his thoughts on, religion or, politics with the way he's acting. I mean, this isn't that big a deal. I actually think that Dayton could clear this up. We were not aware of here's if Neil Sullivan knew what he was doing. This is how you handle it, Mr. Sullivan. This is how you do it. Hey, Flyer fans, Flyer faithful. This is unfortunate. We were very impressed with Adam Jai in the transfer portal, but we were not aware of, his name being in the investigation to the sports gambling ring, during his time at Iona. At the time, we kept him around just to kind of see the direction of the investigation. But we're not moving forward with that, and we just want to separate ourselves for what could potentially be a damning look for the program. We just don't want to be associated with that, even though those are things that happened before his time here. Everyone would be like, yeah, that makes sense, Neil Sullivan. That makes sense, Anthony Grant. But no, they don't do that. And I always say, if you don't say anything, whatever we say is going to be louder than what you could potentially say, unless you're sweeping something under the rug. And is Neil Sullivan hiding something? I mean, no, Dayton would never do that now, would they? They would never do that. They would never do such thing. They're always on the up and up. They would never do that. So that's where I'm at with that. It is what it is. Here's the problem with the Adam Jai situation, okay? So when it first came out at the beginning of the season that he was tied to the Iona sports gambling investigation, all right, remember, his situation is connected to that ongoing investigation, the gambling-related activity in college basketball. Now, it's unclear still, and this was a quote from, Pat Ford with Sports Illustrated, back at the beginning of the season. It was unclear if Jai was under any scrutiny from both the NCAA and federal investigators. Remember, there was a lot of federal involvement in these investigations at the tip-off of the season. Kind of quieted down a bit, but that's the thing. There's been no update on this particular situation. I think this is a big deal. And if you're going to continue to keep this kid on the roster, I know he's no longer on the roster, but it was like a mocking of the fan base and a mocking of the media after, but no one had the gut to continue to press on it about it, because here's what ultimately happened. Adam Jai continued to practice. He continued to practice with the team for a bit. Adam Jai, I remember right after that Pat Ford, article came out and was linked to Dayton at the time, Dayton Flyers, Adam Jai. Adam Jai, they had games at the beginning of the season, and he was sitting on the bench. He was on the floor shooting and warming up with his teammates. And I thought that was a horrible look. I thought it was a typical, no surprise, Dayton Flyers tone-deaf approach to the entire thing. So they just continued to allow it. Now, beat writer, David Jablonski, with the Dayton Daily News for UD, said, Jai was able to practice with the team early in the season. He ran the scout team. He also sat on the bench for home games, but did not travel to away games. So Jablonski in his article says that Jai was last seen on the Dayton bench back on December 2nd when Dayton played East Tennessee State at UD Arena. After a game, December 16th, Dayton Flyers coach Anthony Grant said Adam Jai, who's from the Bronx in New York City, had returned home to be with his family and that Dayton was awaiting a decision by the NCAA. So there you go. Which is why Dayton went and got that point guard from Belgium in December. That was probably the first sign right there. I just don't think anyone really connected those dots as far as that's concerned. But Adam Jai, no longer a Dayton Flyer. And my thing is I think it was a bad look for Dayton to stick by, because who knows? And again, like I said, we're all speculating here. This is speculation. But to me, it's, if you are Dayton, you better be 1 billion% sure that this kid was not tied to any true, sports gambling conflict, even if it was before his time here. Because if you're going to keep him in your locker room, if you're going to keep him around your team, and you're going to allow him to still practice with your team and warm up with your team and sit on the bench with your team, how do we know that he's not continuing to be involved in some capacity that could then link your program to looking messy? Because it's very easy at a private school in Dayton, Ohio, where everyone drinks the Kool-Aid, to sweep little scandals under the rug because no one's truly looking that hard, because no one really wants scandals to come out about their program. But you're risking a potential federal investigation being linked to your school if you keep him around longer. I thought it was a very aggressive decision. And I said, well, maybe to their credit, the only way that they're doing that is if they feel 1 billion% positive that this isn't going to blow up in their face. And then they just quietly let him go home to the Bronx and not come back and treat it like an NBA free agency signing with the kid from Belgium in mid-December. And then the only reason they release a statement on it, because they're so transparent to the fans that they love, is because the fans that they love are diehards and they came across it and figured it out. I would rather Neil Sullivan said nothing than the BS that he spewed out here. They're always wanting to say how much they love the fans. They constantly just treat you like it's ridiculous. Adam Jai. Okay. Hey, Mr. Sullivan, we know Adam Jai is no longer on the Flyers program, and we know he's no longer enrolled at school. Do you have a statement? Yes, I am going to have ChatGPT type up some nonsense and just regurgitate what you know into a press release and literally tell you nothing. But like I said, your seat license is in the mail. We need that check. Where's that money? Come on, we need that money. Adam Jai, no longer enrolled at the University of Dayton, and as such is no longer a member of the men's basketball program. Athletics will have no further comment at this time. No further comment at this time. Let's be clear. You're not going to comment on this ever again. Like I said, all they had to say, you know what? We were comfortable. We felt confident that he had no involvement in this, and we vetted this, and we feel confident about it. Guess what? Problems, we move on from it. But you were silent about it. You got really defensive about it, and then continued to let him warm up with the team, practice with the team, sit on the bench for home games. And then when people would ask about it, it was almost like, what are you asking about this for? This is no big, I don't know. It's a national federal investigations going on all around college basketball. This kid's linked to it, and you're acting like it's no big deal. I mean, my goodness. So it is what it is. I'm Justin Kinner. It's the Justin Kinner Show, 1410 ESPN Radio. Maybe nobody else cared about it like I did, but I cared about it. I think it's that in today's climate of college athletics, to be silly enough to allow that kid even anywhere near your program. I don't care if they found out after. That's a ticking time bomb for the perception of your program. Right? That's oh man, because it's not just, by the way, because when you hear that there is a player at Iona, and there were players, by the way, when you hear that there is a player at Iona that's being investigated for this, you start to wonder, well, there can't just be one. And there's multiple players at Iona that this is being linked back to. There can't just be one. There has to be more. So I believe that this roster does not have that mess on it, but you let one mess on it, and now I think you've tainted the rest, because if there was something that came back to him, he's a Dayton Flyer. Could there be other Dayton Flyers that are a part of this now? Now Dayton looks tainted. And now And by the way, I'll defend Anthony Grant. People could look at some of these bad losses that they've had and say, well, I wonder if something funny happened there. No, 8 years, 9 years of Anthony Grant. This is what you get with Anthony Grant. They're going to win the games that they, he does a good job of making sure that the players are fired up to play the teams that they should. He just does a horrendous job of motivating them to beat the teams that they should, like Liberty. Anyways, I'm Justin Kinner. It's the Justin Kinner Show, 1410 ESPN Radio. Staying in college basketball real quick, we have on the other side, the Wright State Raiders. They're off to a very hot start. I mean, they got off to a bumpy start at the beginning of the season. They're playing 2 true freshmen. I highlighted this earlier. Kellen Pickett, who is a true freshman for Wright State. I mean, he's really come along as of late. They are playing 2 true freshmen are getting heavy minutes for this Wright State team, who has created space between them and the Horizon League at the top. And Wright State's cruising. They've won 6 straight. Oakland, who was led, Greg Campy, the team that went on that NCAA tournament run when they knocked off Kentucky years ago with Gulke and company. They're the favorite every year in this league, and they were the favorite again this year. Wright State's played them twice in the first month of conference play. They've beat them at home. They kicked their ass at home, and they had a 29-point lead, 28-point lead at one point yesterday. Oakland came screaming back, but Wright State held them off on the road in a very tough environment. Rip Hamilton was in attendance for that game. Fun atmosphere, fun crowd. Wright State gets the big win on the road, and they've knocked off some of the hottest teams in that conference. And they're right now they're second in the league offensively. I have the second best offense. They have the number 1 defense. And this team's back to cruising again. All right. It's the longest win streak they've had since 2022. They're fun to watch. They're going to be back at home on Thursday. We want to make sure that we get as many people to that game as possible for Military Appreciation Night. It's going to be a fun one against Youngstown State. And if you want a chance to see and support the Raiders, the first place Raiders at the Nutter Center, text Raiders to 937-518-1410. Text Raiders 937-518-1410. And while supplies last, the ticket allotment that they gave us, we'll pump those out to you guys while supplies last. So 937-518-1410. Text Raiders, and we'll get you hooked up with some tickets to go support the Raiders at the Nutter Center coming up on Thursday. You will hear from Clint Sargent tonight at 6 o'clock on the Wright State Raiders basketball coaches show. Yes, this is an actual coaches show where the coach actually shows up to the show. But Clint Sargent will be available on the Wright State basketball coaches show tonight at 6 o'clock. From 6 to 7, you'll hear from him as the Raiders come back from Detroit, where they got a couple big road wins. It's tough to win on the road, and they're doing that. But yeah, they're doing this with 2 true freshmen. Michael Cooper is the leading scorer and their point guard, and they've won 6 straight. He's missed 3 straight games. The last 3 games he has missed. And they've still won in his absence, and he's their leading scorer. Michael Cooper's an unbelievable talent. He's one of those talents that you do wonder, and this is no disrespect to Wright State, but it's like, man, that speaks volumes about the coaching staff, because they got this kid to come to Wright State, and he is just absolutely wowing everybody. Hopefully he's back by Thursday, but this team has been solid even in his absence. There's another kid in Kellen Pickett, another true freshman. You think of college athletics right now, college football, it's all about the experienced teams with veteran rosters. College basketball is the same thing, and it doesn't matter what level. Even in this level, it's about the most experienced roster. And Wright State has some experienced guys on there, but their best players are all true freshmen, second-year players, guys like Solomon Callahan, who dropped a career-high 27 on the road yesterday. He won Horizon League Player of the Week. Pickett won Freshman of the Week. Wright State basketball this Thursday. Text Raiders 937-518-1410, and we do have the Wright State Raiders coaches show coming up tonight at 6 o'clock. We'll be right back.
The Justin Kinner Show. Right here on 1410 ESPN Radio.
A girl in Kenya dreams of becoming a doctor. An elder in Guatemala dreams of being part of a community. Reach out and change their world, and it will change your own. Unbound.org.
Hi, this is Dr. Justin with Dayton Weight Loss Secret. Have you been asking yourself, what is the secret to getting my excess weight off fast and easy like a lot of other people seem to be doing? The secret is Dayton Weight Loss Secret. Our program helps you lose weight fast and easy with no exercise, no prepackaged meals, no drugs, and no surgery, no injections, and no need to be hungry. Our program helps reset your metabolism to keep the weight off for good. Schedule your free consultation at DaytonWeightLossSecret.com.
I was pre-diabetic before I started this, and I'm not anymore. I've gotten rid of medications. I mean, there is nothing better I can say except it will change your whole life.
The Dayton Weight Loss Secret program has successfully helped thousands of people lose up to 20 to 30 pounds in a month or two. Schedule your free consultation in person or virtually by calling 937-800-1070 or online at DaytonWeightLossSecret.com. Results may vary.
Hey, Cordell Transportation is now hiring experienced Class A CDL drivers, excellent paid benefits, and a $5,000 sign-on bonus. Apply right now online at CordellTransportation.com. Do it right now. Driven to succeed.
Everybody loves the season of giving, but now the season of paying for it is upon us. That not so wonderful time of the year when millions of Americans open their credit card statements, stare in horror at the balance, and resolve then and there to find new ways to save money. If you're among those Americans, why not start by cutting your wireless bill in half right now with Pure Talk's Saver Plan? It's easy. You'll get unlimited talk, text, and 3 gigs of high-speed data on a super-fast nationwide 5G network for just $20 a month. Just dial pound 250, say Mike Rowe, and you'll save an additional 50% off your first month. Ho, ho, ho. And if you're active or former military or a first responder, you'll save an additional 20% every single month. That's pound 250. Say Mike Rowe for the gift that keeps on saving from America's wireless company, Pure Talk.
Are you involved with a school or charitable fundraiser that holds an auction, bid and buy booth, or a raffle to raise money? Many of the most popular items at auctions or booths are autographed sports memorabilia items. How can you get great items in your event? Call Adam Walter at Sports Investments. Sports Investments has a consignment program for fundraisers that has provided outstanding items. You select items that are proven sellers, including autographed pieces from Tiger Woods, LeBron James, Joey Votto, the Big Red Machine, the Bengals, the Browns, UC, XU, UK, NKU, Dayton, Louisville, Notre Dame, and Ohio State. Sports Investments consigns the items to your group at a highly discounted price. And when they sell, you keep the profit. You don't pay anything in advance. And if something doesn't sell, you simply return it. You'll enjoy the experience of dealing with the Walter family. Call them at 513-891-5000. Email Adam at sportsinvestments.com or visit them on Montgomery Road, right off I-275, just 40 minutes from WING.
The Justin Kinner Show. Right here on 1410 ESPN Radio.
All right, I'm here back. The Justin Kinner Show, 1410 ESPN Radio. The NCAA First Four returns to the epicenter of college hoops. The fun begins Selection Sunday, March 15th, with 2 family-friendly events. Join the Big Hoopla for the 4-miler race, then bring the family to the free STEM Challenge, both conveniently located at Wright State University. It all leads to the NCAA First Four at UD Arena, March 17th and 18th. The First Four, Dayton, and the Big Hoopla. Details at DaytonHoopla.com. The Justin Kinner Show, happy Monday. Hope everybody had a great weekend. A lot of NFL playoff action. No Browns, no Bengals. No surprise. No Buckeye football either. No Buckeyes either. We'll talk Reds more coming up in a minute. They made a splash over the weekend. A very good get. I just don't know how much, it makes the Reds better. I just don't know how it helps them accomplish their number one deficiency, their number one need this offseason. And that's the frustration I have with where the Reds are at right now, but we'll get more into that coming up here in just a moment. I want to talk about the Buckeyes. I'm a vibes guy. I'm a vibe, and I'm like that with people. I'm like that with my job, with just anything, right? And I don't know about you. If you're like me, the vibes in Columbus don't seem good, right? Something doesn't seem right. Ohio State has not been very active in the portal. Now, I say that since I've planned this segment. Ohio State has, they've added the safety from Duke. They added the safety from Florida State. But they haven't really been making any splash additions. They've lost bigger names than names that they've added, if that makes sense. And the more I'm looking into this and the more I'm reading into this, it's kind of fascinating, to be honest, because it's just it's Ohio State's roster philosophy that has a lot of people frustrated right now, because if Indiana does go on to win this national championship, this will be the third straight year that the blueprint is just telling you this is what you need to do to win a national championship. And if you look at that blueprint and just ignore it because you're Ohio State and you think you know better, and you're one of the teams that's benefited from this, I think that's going to be something that's very difficult for fans to wrap their head around. We all know that the NIL world is dominating the results on the field right now. Indiana is about to potentially, next Monday, complete a week from tonight, about to potentially complete what will be the most impressive turnaround in the history of college athletics, college football especially. And it all has to do with Mark Cuban. Kurt Cinetti's a beyond amazing coach. There's a lot of teams who have NIL dollars, and it hasn't led to any guaranteed national championships. I mean, Oregon has a billionaire owner and the owner of Nike. And yet they just keep getting demolished in the playoff every year. So, it doesn't guarantee anything, but at least it guarantees you a spot. I mean, what we have learned is that money buys you playoff spots. But what money doesn't buy you is national championships. It buys you the opportunity to win a national championship. What wins you national championships, especially if we do see, and Miami's kind of proof of this too. They have like a 12th year quarterback in Carson Beck at this point, but you look at Indiana, they are one of the oldest rosters. They are the oldest, one of the oldest rosters in all of college football. I saw that their average age roster and the Eagles is pretty damn similar. Like it's fascinating to see that the line between those two, but old veteran experience rosters, because Indiana's approach to putting their roster together is we're not going to recruit the high school ranks. And that's bad because I value high school football. I've called high school football with Keith Byers for 10 years here in the Miami Valley. And we've called high school football games for a lot of players who have gone on to play high school football on Saturdays, or college football on Saturdays. I mean, like we value high school football. College football is no longer truly valuing high school football, because the blueprint is older veteran experience rosters are going to put you in the best position possible to win. So why am I going to go get the best talent coming out of high school? Well, that's what we've been conditioned to believe is how you get it done, right? Like that's what you have to do. The problem is with that is you don't traditionally play a lot of your true freshmen. Even before the portal and before the NIL, you really didn't traditionally play a lot of your true freshmen. So now what's happening is true freshmen, high schoolers are coming out of college and they're demanding money. And now you're paying money to these players coming out of college who aren't going to play right away. Ohio State spent a lot of money, right, on a lot of very good 5-star, 4-star talents coming out of high school. And a lot of those guys have entered the portal. Guys like CJ Hicks. CJ Hicks got opportunities, but you think of the player from Springfield, that went to Ohio State. He was next up in line to be the starter. Ohio State paid him a lot of money to go to Ohio State. And he went to Ohio State and he got paid a lot of money and he did not play very much, if at all. And now that it's his time, now that it's time for him to shine, now that it's time for Ohio State to get the most out of him that they've developed into him over the years, now that it's time for them to reap their reward of their investment, now he just used Ohio State to get paid, get developed, and now he's getting paid even more to hit the portal and go elsewhere. I'm not saying that's wrong, but that's what's happening. So a lot of people are saying, well, Ohio State, if you're complaining that you don't have as much NIL money as some of these other schools, stop wasting it on players that aren't playing for you. All the NIL money that Indiana is piping out are going to players who have proven that they can play and have proven that they can come and make an impact right now. So if you're going to get NIL money at Indiana, it's going to be to come play and earn that money. Not really earn it. I mean, you got to come and play. And if you're going to get this money, you're going to play now. Ohio State's paying the best talent coming out of high school to basically sit there and wait their turn. And then the problem is by the time it is their turn, they're anxious. They're going to get paid next year what they agreed to coming out of high school or after their freshman year. Or they could hit the portal and make double that because we're coming from Ohio State. And we know you're going to be good even without seeing it because we know you're developed. Now Ohio State is dangerously becoming other teams' developmental team. hey, you know what? We're just going to go pay a bunch of players that haven't technically played yet from Columbus because we know Ryan Day and his staff develops these guys. We're just willing to pay them more. And Ohio State's saying, well, we can't pay you more. You haven't done anything for us yet other than stay here. Now we got to pay Jeremiah Smith what we thought was $5 million. Now we got to pay him $6 million. And I'm throwing out number, but you know what I mean? Like everyone's number moves. You got to pay to keep the guys that played for you last year. And then you got to pay even more for the guys that didn't play just to stick around to see if they can play. And now you're spending a ton of money on guys that you don't technically know what you're getting. But Indiana, they go out and they get they know what they're getting at quarterback next year. They're going to lose the Heisman winner in Mendoza. Mendoza is going to go to the NFL. And now they have one of the best quarterbacks in the entire portal, and the quarterback that they got from TCU, he's going to put up numbers because they also went and they got 4 or 5-star wide receivers, proven guys, 1,000-yard wide receivers from other schools. They know what they're getting there. Indiana, this train's going to keep going. Ohio State, I don't know if that train's going to keep going. Ohio State might regress next year. We talked about their schedule. They play Oregon. They play USC. They play Indiana on the road. They play Michigan. They play at Texas. And they've lost a lot of talent. This is a depleted roster that they're filling the gaps with. But here's the thing. They also have, heading into next season, they're paying money to athletes who are not going to play next year. They're paying them money as placeholders to come here. We're going to develop you. And when it's time for you to play, we'll throw you out there. Well, guess what? You're going to bring them there next year. You're going to pay them. You're going to develop them. And there's a good chance that they're going to leave, and you're not going to have anything to show for the money that you gave them. And you're telling us that the gap between you and Indiana is so wide because you have no money. No, you have no money because you're paying players that aren't freaking playing. Indiana's paying players who are playing and making an impact. And that's how Indiana's going to start to create a gap and separate themselves. That is right. Indiana, very realistically, could be the face of the Big Ten. They could be bigger, badder, better than Ohio State. When you think about the Big Ten, you very well could be thinking of Indiana football and not Ohio State. And I can't tell you the last time that that's been the case. Not in my lifetime. Even as good as Michigan has been at times, even when they had the hardball run, they might have been you think of the Big Ten, you think of Michigan because of the cheating scandal and even the national championship, but there was still a little asterisk there. Michigan fan Shaw, you don't want to say that it's true, but it is. No one truly outside of, Maize and Blue truly respects that national championship. It's always been Ohio State. Even on down years, Ohio State's the face of the conference. Ohio State's very close to losing that if they're not careful. Indiana has more money. Indiana has all the momentum right now. And Indiana is knocking on the door of winning a national championship. And their roster could be as good, if not better, next year. And they just beat you in the Big Ten championship and then they'd go on to beat Alabama. And they throttle Oregon. And if they throttle Miami, the team that beat you to win a national championship, guys, Curt Cignetti is doing laps around Ryan Day. The Indiana football program, of all things, the Indiana football program doing laps around Ohio State at this point. Ohio State might have to truly rethink their approach. It's always been about, they can't let their ego get in the way. Well, this is how we do it here. Yes, Ohio State's becoming the one thing that I've always been told, never be that guy in your line of work. I've been at my company for 10 plus years, and my main goal has always been, we've been bought twice now. I've had multiple bosses, and the one thing I've always done my best is I have never sat down in front of a boss who wants to initiate change and me say, well, hold on, we're not going to do that, sir, because we've always done it this way. Ohio State, I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear, no, we've always taken pride in what we've done, the relationships with these high schools and developing relationships with these high schoolers. We bring them here and they know they're going to get better and they're going to become, stop with the bumper sticker philosophy BS. This game actually isn't hard anymore. This game got easier. You don't have to try to find talent in high school that you hope develops. You just get to go develop talent now and go kick ass and win. Indiana's proving it. You maybe don't have to give up on the high school ranks altogether, but the fact that this team can't go fix its roster because they have so much of it tied up into unproven high school talent that there's no room for them to play for the time being. You have more money being put into guys that can't play than putting that money into guys that can play and come help you win next year. You have Julian Sayin, who was a Heisman contender as a freshman. Okay, you have him coming back. You have Jeremiah Smith, who is arguably as talented as that position has been throughout the history of the program. We're watching one more year of the best wide receiver in the history of the program, and you might not have anything to show for it after that national. And again, let me reset that. This team's won a national championship. My apologies. They do have something to show for it. But are we going to look at the Jeremiah Smith era and be as excited about what happened? I feel like I'm going to look at the Jeremiah Smith era and be more focused on what could have been. 937-518-1410. Do you agree? Do you have a problem with Ohio State's roster philosophy? 937-518-1410. We'll be right back.
The Justin Kinner Show. Right here on 1410 ESPN Radio.
Our forecast is mostly clear, 31 tonight, partly sunny, 49 tomorrow, chance of rain and snow, and 43 on Wednesday. I'm Rick Schrepp, 1410 ESPN Radio.
1410 Wing AM, Dayton's ESPN Radio, powered by... Your favorite song shouldn't have to wait for Wi-Fi. Switch to Straight Talk and get real unlimited data on Verizon's 5G network. Straight Talk, available at straighttalk.com or Walmart.
For decades, people have been asking, what's the famous recipe behind Lee's Famous Recipe Chicken? And we've decided we're finally going to tell you. Starting with the 8-piece family meal and its 8 pieces of crispy, delicious bone-in chicken, 4 fluffy, buttery biscuits, and 2 large sides. Oh, wait, I'm just getting word from our lawyers that I can't actually tell you any of that. So, better pick up an 8-piece family meal and figure it out for yourself. Good luck. The 8-piece family meal, only at Lee's Famous Recipe Chicken, famous for a reason.
Hi, this is Dr. Justin with Dayton Weight Loss Secret. Have you been asking yourself, what is the secret to getting my excess weight off fast and easy like a lot of other people seem to be doing? The secret is Dayton Weight Loss Secret. Our program helps you lose weight fast and easy with no exercise, no prepackaged meals, no drugs, and no surgery. No injections and no need to be hungry. Our program helps reset your metabolism to keep the weight off for good. Schedule your free consultation at DaytonWeightLossSecret.com.
When I started this, I was